Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia,
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the dark oak.
and today we're going to discuss the nearly 27-year-old disappearance of Amy Wroe Bechtel.
Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month through our charity called the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of earnings from our Patreon and sponsors to a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. To find out how you can be part of the movement, head over to thedarkoak.com or stay with us until the end of the episode and we will give you all the details.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Well, today we're going to be discussing the 1997 disappearance of Amy Wroe Bechtel, which has been called one of the most baffling cases in U.S. history. A massive search was launched when she vanished, and the search was so large that even Russia was asked to assist.
Whoa. Okay, I didn't realize that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a little familiar with the case, but I didn't realize the scope is that large.
So large. The largest in Wyoming history before or since.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm. Amy was a healthy young athlete who went jogging in the Shoshone National Forest and was never seen again. And for years, Wyoming was plastered with posters, flyers, and signs. There were 2 websites dedicated to finding Amy, and an 800 number hotline was monitored 24/7. Amy's husband led efforts to find his missing wife despite being considered the prime suspect. And as years went by, other possible suspects were discussed, but the mystery of what happened to Amy Wroe Bechtel has never been solved. Did she succumb to an injury from a fall or a wild animal in the wilderness of Wyoming? Was she the victim of a serial killer? Does her husband know more than he shared, or is Amy Wroe Bechtel still alive today? Let's dig in, and then you tell me what you think.
So many possibilities.
Amy was born in California, but she grew up in Wyoming when her family moved there shortly after her birth. Amy was the youngest of 4 siblings. She had 2 sisters and a brother. Amy met her husband Steve while in college at the University of Wyoming while they were both there studying exercise physiology. And they began dating in 1992, moving to Lander, Wyoming after they graduated in 1994, and they got married in June 1996 when Amy was 24 years old and Steve was 27.
So for Amy, fitness was just a way of life.
For both of them, it literally
For
was
both
their
of them.
life.
Okay.
It was.
All right.
Now, Steve was born in Casper, Wyoming. He was the son of an architect and the director of a school for developmentally disabled children. And Steve has a younger brother and an older sister. As you have highlighted, Amy was an amazing athlete, but she was primarily a runner. She captained the University of Wyoming cross-country and track teams. And to my knowledge, she still holds the University of Wyoming record in the 3,000-meter race.
Okay. Definitely an athlete.
She loved running so much that after college, she had hoped to qualify for the 2000 Olympics as a long-distance runner.
Oh, okay. So this is pretty mega for her.
Very mega. But here's what's really cool. Here's actually my favorite part of the story. She was not naturally gifted in running. She was slow in high school, and her friends and family said it did not come naturally to her, but she worked so hard. She worked her tail off and then was able to break all these records and become super, super good. And I just thought that was so inspiring because I don't know, just it's one thing when it comes naturally to you and you just do it and you don't know how, but it's another thing when like you work to get there, and she did. I thought that was so cool.
That's really phenomenal. As someone who is described as resembling a baby giraffe when I run, I can also confirm that I am not a runner, and I don't know if I would have had the gumption to work at it as hard as Amy did.
It sounds like maybe if you tried a little harder, maybe you too.
Maybe I could be slightly better than a baby giraffe.
Maybe you could be an adult giraffe caliber runner.
I'll do my best. My goal is to be good enough that my kids don't make fun of me when I'm participating in sports with them.
Right now, that's just my goal in life, just in general. Just if I can just go a day without my kids being mortified by something I've done, then it's a win.
So you're saying the Olympics might be slightly out of your reach?
I have closer stars I'm shooting for.
But good for Amy. That's incredible.
Absolutely. Now, this was a shared passion, this
That's right. She and her husband
athleticism.
too.
Yes, but Steve, he actually had a deep love for rock climbing, which now we know is very popular. But back in the 90s, when our story takes place, this was still a relatively obscure sport.
Oh, okay.
Now, I have a little Dark Oak podcast host side note. In a different life, I think I could have been a rock climber. So it's funny that you're talking about how you are not a runner because, I mean, full disclosure, in my current life, I've literally never climbed a rock ever, not even one of those like wall rocks that you find in gyms. But I find this sport fascinating. Really, I do. And I think if I lived in a place where we actually had big rocks, it would have been something I was into.
I just find it incredible that someone who has more phobias and fears and anxiety about strange circumstances, I mean, more than I can count. Rock climbing at a very high height is something that you would do.
I think so. Never done it, but it sounds really fun.
Swimming over a shipwreck out.
Well, that's just crazy. Who would want to do that?
Yet climbing where the eagles soar would be something that you're like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, again, I've never done it, but my fantasy self says yes. It really does.
Fantasy self, Cynthia, run a prison mob and climb a mountain.
We just need to give her a name, I think. Yeah, we do.
Is it going to be like from The Office, like Prison Mike, but, you know, I don't know. What's your alter ego name?
I used to think maybe Buffy.
Oh,
Can
okay.
you
That
see
could
it?
work. No, I could see
Yeah,
I could totally
yeah.
see Buffy.
So Buffy's the cool girl in prison and definitely a rock climber.
You're going to need to wear darker eye makeup.
Oh, I can do it. And I got pictures from the 90s to prove it. All right, back to our real life story, not
Yes,
my
sorry.
fantasy life I've
Yes.
imagined for myself. It's July 24th, 1997, and Amy and Steve lived in a cottage located at 9 Lucky Lane. And this cottage was one of 10 of these little houses located on this block. And apparently it was this like secluded block of hipster rock climbers known locally as Climbers Row. And I also would have lived there.
What a special niche of people.
I know. See, that's what I'm like. These are my people. I know it. I just know it.
Well, you and I one day are going to hike the Appalachian Trail. That's similar, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
You got it.
I'm not climbing anything, though. I'm just hiking. I could hike. I'm not going to run because then you'll make fun of me.
Yeah.
But I could hike.
Yeah, we'll do it. Hopefully there's a big rock I can climb along the way.
Cynthia, see that boulder? Climb it. Get it out of your system.
That's right. Oh, no. I'm imagining actually having to do it is a different story.
I'll take videos.
For the Patreon. Well, Amy and Steve's neighbors were also their landlords. It was Todd and Amy Skinner, who were also part owners of Wild Iris Mountain Sports, where Amy and Steve both worked part-time. And again, with my fantasy interest in rock climbing, I actually recognized Todd's name because Todd was an expert in big wall climbing. But sadly, Todd died in October of 2006 when he fell 500 feet while climbing the face of the Leaning Tower in Yosemite National Park.
Ooh, okay, that's tragic.
So when I say these people are athletes, like they're the real deal. This is big deal stuff. So this Thursday, July 24th, both Amy and Steve had the day off from work at Wild Iris. And Amy contemplated taking the day to drive to Powell, where her parents lived, which was about 185 miles away, because she'd wanted to pick up some furniture from her parents' house. But last minute, she decided that she had too much to do around town, so she canceled plans with her mother. Amy and Steve had breakfast at home and then went their separate ways around 9:30 a.m. Now, Amy had created a to-do list, so a girl after my own heart. I love a list.
Bless it.
And this list was made up of errands that she wanted to run before heading out to the Loop Road to map a course for a 10K run that she was organizing. So she's like planning this run.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of how she, thought, she was planning this run on this hill. That's what it was called, a hill race. But she wanted everyone to be able to jump in this lake nearby afterwards as a bit of a reward after the race. So she was just trying to map all this out. And I thought, how cool.
That
Like,
is really
so
cool.
cool, right?
Yeah.
Now, Steve took their dog and he met up one of the couple's friends, a man named Sam Leitner, who they knew from Jackson, Wyoming. The two men met in Du Bois, which was an 80-mile drive for Sam and a 70-mile drive for Steve. And there, the two had plans to check on potential climbing routes up Cartridge Creek. Back at home, Amy taught a 90-minute youth weightlifting class at the Wind River Fitness Center, where the owner, Dudley Irvine, described her as being in a good mood and noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Just a few days prior, Steve and Amy had purchased a house at 965 McDougal Drive. So Amy had made phone calls to the phone company. She called to set up the gas, the insurance company, all the things you do when you're preparing to move into a new home.
So they were still living with these other kind of adventurers right now, and they were planning to move into the new home.
They literally had bought the house like 3 days prior. So they are still living in the cottage.
Oh, and this is probably why she wanted to go get the furniture and all that stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
Now, a little after 2 p.m., Amy paid a visit to a store called Camera Connection on Main Street in Lander. And the owner, John Strom, didn't notice anything out of the ordinary during Amy's visit, other than to note that she wore a jogging outfit consisting of a yellow shirt, black shorts, and running shoes.
Okay.
John sent Amy upstairs to Gallery 331, which was a portrait studio, to see a man named Greg Wagner about framing a few photos that Amy was entering in a contest. And Greg remembered Amy glancing at her watch once during their short time together. But other than that, he didn't notice anything unusual or memorable. Amy left the gallery around 2:30 p.m., and that was the last confirmed sighting of Amy. That afternoon, Steve came home to Lucky Lane around 4:30 p.m., which was a little earlier than he'd originally expected to get back. The new climbing route he and Sam had looked into didn't work out, and it had started to rain. So he and Sam had packed up and just gone their separate ways. Phone records do confirm that Steve made a call from the couple's cottage at 4:43 p.m. Now, Steve would later tell investigators that he was not immediately worried about Amy. The couple was not in the habit of leaving notes for each other when they left the house. Neither one owned a cell phone, so it wasn't unusual to maybe come home and not necessarily know exactly where the other one was.
Well, it's only 4:30.
Right. But by 8:15 that night, when Steve was having dinner with the Skinners, he was definitely starting to get a little more concerned.
Sure, that makes sense.
Now, the Skinners had invited Steve to see an 8:45 showing of the movie Con Air. But
oh boy, that makes me feel really old.
So I've never seen it.
It's fine. But it all of a sudden took me back to like where I was.
When it came out, yeah. Well, Steve said he was too worried about Amy to go see a movie. So instead, he just wanted to be home, which I totally get.
Well, yeah, especially since they didn't have cell phones.
Right.
I mean, I want to be home when she gets there. I want to figure out like what happened. Is she okay?
Absolutely. Steve called Amy's parents around 10 p.m. because even though it was his understanding that Amy had canceled her trip to visit them that day, he thought maybe he'd gotten things mixed up or maybe she'd changed her mind and ended up going there on a whim. But her parents had not seen her. And so he then tried the local hospital. And again, no one had seen Amy. So at around 10:45, Steve made a call to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office and reported his wife missing. 2 deputies were dispatched to his and Amy's home, and preparations were made to get search and rescue going first thing in the morning. When the Skinners got home from their movie at around 11, and they learned that Amy still had not come home, they volunteered to drive around the area that they believed Amy had gone running, specifically Loop Road, which was a 30-mile back road through Shoshone National Forest.
Okay, makes sense. Maybe she had gotten injured. Maybe something happened. Also, kudos for getting the search going right away. How many times are people reported missing and nothing happens?
Right. Well, technically, the official search didn't start till the morning, but they acted.
They at least considered it important. They didn't brush it off.
Right. They did. But I still think, man, those,
It's
6 hours,
true.
7 hours of darkness would have been a long several hours for Steve.
No, and you're right. And especially if she was thought to have disappeared out in the elements somewhere, you would want to get her as quick as possible. You wouldn't just want to wait till the next morning.
Right. And because I can assume, and Steve did, that maybe she got injured and was
Absolutely.
unable to get home, which is scary. We're
Oh,
talking
that's
about
true.
the great wilderness out
So
here.
they did a great job by taking the report, maybe not so great by not starting the search earlier.
I think so. At the same time, I don't know. Maybe you can't search the mountains of Wyoming at night. I don't know.
I think that may be true, that you have to look out for the safety of your searchers. And again, we know in a lot of these outfits, most of them are volunteers.
Right.
I can see that.
Well, after an hour of driving, so at around 1 a.m., the Skinners ended up finding Amy's white Toyota Tercel station wagon parked at a turnoff for Burnt Gulch.
Mm.
Her car was unlocked, which was not unusual for Amy. The keys were found on the passenger seat underneath Amy's to-do list with 4 of its 13 items checked off. Also on the passenger seat were Amy's expensive sunglasses. The only thing that was unusual about this scene was the fact that Amy's green Eagle Creek wallet was not in the car because Amy never took it running.
Yeah, that would seem like it'd be cumbersome.
Now, Todd did have a cell phone, so he called Steve to let him know that they had found Amy's car. And fearing that his wife had been injured while on her run, which makes
Sure.
total sense, Steve grabbed his friend Kirk, some lanterns, and a sleeping bag and took off for Burnt Gulch.
Yeah.
The friends looked for Amy all night, and several more friends arrived before dawn to help. Early on the morning of July 25th, the official search party began, and by the weekend, more than 200 searchers, most of them well-trained professionals, scoured the area. So you mentioned a lot of them are
Oh.
volunteers, but actually in this case, one of the things that makes this case so interesting is I watched the Disappeared episode on this case, and one of the interviewees said, you couldn't find a better place to go missing. Like if you have to go missing, this is where you want it to happen, because you can't throw a stick and not hit someone who is better at water rescue or
Okay.
cliff climbing, like just all these things.
Noted.
So
Sure.
there actually were a lot of people who were really well equipped in
Wow.
this search,
Okay.
and all of them were looking for Amy. The search mission began with an intensive scouring of the 5-mile radius around Amy's vehicle.
Right.
A day later, that expanded to a 20-mile radius, and then a 30-mile radius on day 3, with 300 people assisting in the effort. Quote, "We know what we're doing," lead investigator Dave King of the Fremont County Sheriff's Office told media outlets. "We have 50 activations a year. We have specialists in steep angle searches, swift water searches, cave rescues. We have trackers, air spotters, and cadaver dogs, which supposedly can catch scents even underwater." End quote.
Maybe he was a little overconfident in providing those comments.
Well, I don't know, because I feel like if she was there, maybe they should have found her.
Okay. Okay, good point.
At the same time, I don't know. The mountains and the vast wilderness of Wyoming also, I can see where someone might go missing and never be found.
Sure.
So I can kind of see it from both. I think what he was saying is we have the best of the best on it, and if she's out there, we're going to find her, which I
Okay.
think is a great attitude.
Yeah. Oh, that's the guy you want looking for you, for sure.
Right.
But I mean, I guess I shouldn't steal his thunder too much. It sounds like they've been very successful in their previous searches, and it sounds like he's very serious about trying to find her and bringing in the right people to do it. So I should give him a little bit more credit. But, it doesn't mean you're always going to figure it out. So,
Well, maybe.
maybe I was really onto something.
Maybe I'm just throwing you off here. Well, let's find out a little more about investigator Dave King in a few
Okay,
minutes.
I'm just
why
saying
don't we?
that's a very bold statement.
It is a bold statement. However, for the first 5 days, the search did include multi-jurisdictional search and rescue teams with trained tracking dogs, along with others on horseback, on ATVs and dirt bikes, and on foot. The National Guard was called in. Civil Air Patrol provided fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, one outfitted with infrared heat-seeking technology.
Good grief.
They were looking for her.
If my loved one went missing, this is what I would want to see.
Absolutely. So it seems logical to say that if Amy was lost or hurt in this area, she should have been found.
Yes, that seems reasonable.
If she was the victim of a bear or a mountain lion, the dogs should have alerted, or maybe searchers should have found partial remains or a piece of her clothing. But there was nothing.
All
She had
fair.
vanished. After 5 days of empty searches, investigators began to suspect foul play, and after 8 days, the search was called off.
I mean, what other conclusion can you come to?
Right. What began as a missing persons case turned into a criminal investigation.
Yikes.
Now, Amy did not appear to be the type of person to vanish voluntarily, so the idea that she ran away or maybe committed suicide was ruled out pretty quickly. More than 24 FBI and Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation agents arrived to work on the case, setting up a base in the sheriff's office. They questioned everyone they could think of and chased every lead that came in. The FBI even obtained NASA satellite images of the area, which provided nothing new. And later, the FBI would go as far as to turn to Russia after learning their MIR space station had also taken satellite photos of Wyoming at the time. But unfortunately, extensive cloud cover prevented those images from being of any use.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the early weeks, months, and years of the investigation, numerous leads poured in, but none were able to be validated. There was a report of gunfire on the night of July 24th at Lewis Lake, which was 8 miles from Burt Gulch, and a voice yelling, "Come on, you sissy, do it, do it." But nothing ever came from that.
Okay.
Abandoned mines, caves, and cabins were checked after psychics called in to say that they had seen Amy being held there. Divers checked the water in all of the surrounding areas. On August 2nd, an unidentified woman called to say she saw a light blue pickup, which matched the description of Steve's truck, speeding through a campground on Loop Road with a blonde woman inside at around 5 p.m. on July 24th. Now, months later, there were possible sightings of Amy in Salt Lake City, here in Florida, New Mexico, and Colorado, all of which came to nothing. A suspicious smell near Lewis Lake, reported by woodcutters, turned up a dead deer. Investigators dug up the ground at another smell alerted to by cadaver dogs and found nothing. A bottle discovered floating in the middle of a river with a message inside reading, quote, "Help. I'm being held captive in Sinks Canyon. Amy," end quote, was dismissed because the handwriting did not match up.
Okay, also, who are these people?
These are just some of the tips that came in, but all of them led to nothing.
I know, but somebody had to write that.
Yeah, but people do stuff like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine
It's
because it's so awful,
horrible.
but people do that.
That's horrible.
It's horrible. It's horrible. Now, there were some more reliable clues and tips that came in from a few eyewitness accounts that seemed to confirm that Amy did at least drive her car to where it was found and probably got out and began jogging.
Okay.
So investigators discovered at the bottom of her to-do list a milepost description of landmarks that she had jotted down while referring to her odometer along the first section of the proposed route of the 10K race.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so this would indicate Amy had been driving her car and not yet abducted at that point, if that's what happened.
Well, which seems likely, but yeah,
right.
Got it.
Investigator Reiser and the FBI followed up on stalker angles, checking out men in Amy's past who were obsessed with her. There was one man in particular who moved to Lander to be closer to her, and another man who doted on her where she sometimes waited tables at a local restaurant. But nothing came from those leads. 6 years later, in 2003, hikers found a watch up the middle fork of that waterway where the bottle with a note was found.
Yeah.
And this watch matched the description of the watch Amy was wearing when she went jogging that day. Bones found nearby were proved to be from an animal, and police could never determine whether the watch was actually Amy's.
Oh, so frustrating.
There were a few more sightings on the day she went missing that seemed credible. There was a mechanic for the county who remembers seeing a female jogger on the switchbacks of Loop Road that day. There was also a surveyor on a job that remembers seeing her. Jim and Wendy Gibson, owners of the Pronghorn Lodge in Lander, also later recalled passing a slender blonde woman in dark shorts jogging swiftly high up in the hills on Loop Road.
Sounds like her.
It does. Amy's story was told all over the nation. with her case being highlighted in the New York Times, People magazine, and Runner's World, but each one failed to produce anything of any value. Amy's photo and information appeared on the Jumbotron at University of Wyoming Cowboys football games. More than 270,000 missing persons posters were sent to all of the obvious locations in 40 states, offering a $100,000 reward. A 24-hour hotline was established and manned by Steve, along with his friends and his family. A whereisamy.com website was created, linking out to hundreds of other sites. And still, the years rolled by with no useful leads coming in. Amy's story was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, The Geraldo Rivera Show, and Disappeared, that episode that I did watch.
Right.
New batches of tips were elicited at each airing, but never any solid leads.
She just vanished.
She just vanished. State newspaper Casper Star Tribune ran a regular link in large, bold lettering that said, "Help find Amy," on the homepage of its website through the remainder of 1997. A year later, it was still there, but in a smaller font and no longer bold. And by May 1999, it was gone. The case went cold. Now, unfortunately, it has been determined that early on in the investigation, mistakes were made. A footprint that was believed to have been Amy's was lost when it was trampled by searchers.
Oh.
There was other potential evidence that was also compromised when, again, volunteer searchers believed that they were simply looking for a lost hiker.
So these are the professionals.
Well,
And again, they're professional searchers, not professional investigators. So that's different, right?
right. And there were also volunteers. There were volunteer searchers. I mean, we know her friends and family did not wait till the morning.
Right.
So I don't know who exactly messed it up. And the thing is, I don't know what alternative they have, because I feel like they had every right to believe that she was
Just
hurt,
simply injured.
out, and just needing help.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of which the lesser of the two evils. Like, do you go looking for her, or do we preserve everything?
Right.
Sergeant John Zerga, who decades later took over Amy's cold case, admitted the blunders, saying, quote, "We didn't close off any routes out here. We didn't close off any vehicles. All we had was a bunch of people up here looking for a missing runner. And we actually ruined it with the vehicle because we allowed the Skinners to drive it home." End quote.
And again, why would they think it's anything except her being lost in the woods?
Right.
I understand.
And if she had been lost in the woods with maybe a life-threatening injury, and we didn't go looking for her, and we waited too long, that has a bad outcome as well.
Right.
So I think sometimes you just have to do the best you can.
I feel like this is rock and hard place right here.
Mm-hmm. At the time of Amy's disappearance, lead investigator King had just been promoted to detective from county jailer. So remember, we weren't sure what to think about King.
His very bold
his very bold statements
about their successes. Yes.
But, and you, I think, kind of felt this coming early on. I tried to throw you off, but you're too smart. Not only was he brand new in the position, but he also joined the search several days late because he was away on a horsepacking trip when Amy disappeared.
Okay.
Oh, it gets worse. 2 months later, King handed this case off to Detective Reiser and focused on his campaign for sheriff, a position he would later resign from in November of 2000 because King was subsequently convicted of drug use and stealing cocaine from the department's evidence room. So,
okay.
Does this have any effect on Amy's case at all? I don't know. I don't think there's any way of knowing, but this is the caliber of person we had leading that case in the beginning.
Okay. All right. Got it.
With what seemed to be no other credible leads, both King and Reiser zeroed in on one suspect pretty much from the very beginning. Say it with me.
Well, that'd be Steve.
The husband.
The husband.
Reiser told the Billings Gazette, quote, "If a man's wife disappears mysteriously, you don't clam up, you don't refuse to cooperate with the cops." End quote.
Okay.
But maybe you do, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Oh, okay.
But first, let me tell you, Steve's alibi appeared pretty tight. Sam Leitner vouched for him,
Well, and
saying
everything you've said so far seems like a concerned husband.
it does, but we have to have somebody to blame, don't we? And so when we can't find somebody to blame, I feel like sometimes you just find somebody.
You know
I mean, not
what?
that that's okay, but I just there was nothing else out
Listen,
there.
when you cover a lot of mystery cases,
Mhm.
you find most of the theories that come out of it is people just have to have someone to blame. They
Right,
have to have something to point a finger at.
right.
And I get it, but I do hate this proverbial, like, it's always the husband. It's always the husband. It's like we're like a Lifetime movie or
Right.
something.
I mean, statistically speaking, it's always the husband, but
Well,
I mean,
it's
statistically
true.
speaking, we know that's
A
true.
family member,
Sure.
absolutely, someone close to the family, a family member, something like that. But I do want to hear why, if there were any sticking points with Steve, any like foibles that he made or something that is seemed out of character. Because everything I've heard about him so far is, again, he seemed very concerned. He's leading the search. Everyone around them seems to think that he's on the up and up, at least so far.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what made Steve suspicious, but first let me just give you his full alibi and how that checked out.
Yeah, like what did he say?
Right. So Sam Leitner did vouch for him,
Okay.
saying that they were together for most of the day. Sam said that the two had stopped in a store and bought a hammer. And there are records showing the purchase of a hammer, though the shop owner did not recall Steve or Sam.
What? Okay. So they had gone rock climbing, didn't work out. The path they had picked was not good. Then it
Right.
started
Started to
raining.
rain. Yep.
So they went and said they purchased a hammer,
I
which,
assume the hammer was before the rock climbing because I assume the hammer, I don't think it's like a
oh,
hammer.
okay. All right.
I
That
think
makes
it's a rock
sense.
climbing
Like a
hammer.
pick hammer or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Obviously, I'm assuming that Sam and Steve were not able to like literally provide a receipt, but the store had records showing that a hammer was purchased, but the shopkeeper was unable to say for sure it was Steve or Sam who purchased it. And there are no third party witnesses. There is nobody other than Steve or Sam who can confirm that the two actually spent the day where they said they did.
Okay.
However, it's also not believed that Sam would have lied for Steve. He probably wouldn't have given a false alibi. He's actually admitted in later interviews that he had a falling out with Steve and he got along better with Amy. So the idea that he would have lied for someone who may have potentially been involved
Hurt
with
his
his
friend.
friend's, demise didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately for Steve, detectives were unable to verify that phone call to the hospital that he alleged he made the night, and they were able to verify some of the phone calls. So I don't know what happened with that. Again, this is 1997. It's not how technology is now, and I don't know the why, but they were unable to verify he did make that call. Investigators said they were some other minor timeline discrepancies, but they're so minor they haven't even really been shared. But,
Okay.
the investigators, I think, are looking for anything they can find to hold against anybody, quite frankly. But if Steve was responsible for Amy's disappearance, to your point, he sure was doing a good job playing the grieving husband.
Right.
Steve was leading search groups. He was helping to put up posters of his missing wife, and he was willfully participating in several interviews with the investigators. But unfortunately, things took a turn on August 5th when an FBI agent attempted to strong arm Steve. And during this interview, this agent accused Steve of murdering Amy, going as far as to say he had evidence linking him to the crime. Now, I don't know if Steve is innocent. I believe he is. But if you are innocent of something and someone's telling you, we know you did it and there's evidence, I think I would feel pretty confident that no, you don't have that. So for whatever reason, and possibly because he's innocent, Steve figured this FBI agent was bluffing.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can imagine, the accusation did cause him to clam up and retain a lawyer, which caused the investigation to come to a bit of a halt.
I don't think I would have done anything different than Steve.
I completely understand where if someone was accusing me of murdering my husband and saying they had evidence that I had done it,
I would say, well, we're done.
Yeah, I'd be hiring an attorney and I would no longer be cooperating.
We're done. For my own safety, I'm not speaking to you anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's completely fine.
I do too. Steve hired Wyoming lawyer Kent Spence, and the Spence law firm advises all of their clients to refuse a polygraph because they are, quote, unreliable, inadmissible in court, and prone to false positives, end quote.
Which is true. Ironically, I love when people take polygraphs. However, I don't know that I would ever take one because I know how unreliable they are, yet somehow I still like hearing the results of other people's polygraphs. It makes no sense.
I'm with you because I actually put a lot of weight in them. If someone fails their polygraph, I'm sorry, but I do. I judge you. I think you're lying.
Even though we know.
Even though we know.
They're not always accurate.
And even though we do this for a living and we know that you're not supposed to take a polygraph, I mean, people are given the advice not to take polygraphs even if they're innocent. I am also one of those people who thinks you refuse to take a polygraph. Why?
Exactly.
What are you hiding? And I think if I were approached, I would take a polygraph. I think I would if I were innocent because I would be like, I have nothing to hide. Whether that's a wise choice or not, I don't know, especially given my weird quirks and anxiety. I'd probably fail that thing all over the place.
Here's the deal, though. If they suspect you, even if you are proven to be truthful on the polygraph, they're still going to come after you. It's not like they're like, well, pass the polygraph. You're off the hook now. You know, how many stories have we heard where
That's
like,
true.
well, they did pass the polygraph test. However,
Right.
you know, X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. I just don't think I don't think you can win either way.
You can't. Well, from what I've heard,
If you're innocent,
right?
You know,
I have heard that taking a polygraph never helps any person. So any person who ever takes a polygraph, it never helps them because they either, if it comes back that you were being truthful, nobody ever hears about that and it's dropped. It's like it never happened. If it comes back that you were not being truthful, that information is given to everyone and used as evidence. There's no benefit to the person taking the polygraph.
I absolutely agree. So the fact that you and I still love to hear about people's polygraph results, you know, we're probably slightly skewed, but
it's a work in progress. We're working on it.
But it is true. It's almost like this, you just need to know this.
Because I do think, and honestly, I don't know the statistics, so I could be totally wrong, but I do think they're probably right more than they're wrong. I mean, there's got to be some truth to it, but maybe not. I could be totally wrong. They might be complete junk science. I have no clue.
Even knowing that, I still wouldn't take one.
And see, I'm like, somebody give me a polygraph.
You are wild. You wild woman. I will climb to the top of this rock and take a polygraph test.
When in reality, I don't want to do either, I'm sure.
No.
When Steve refused to take a lie detector test, Amy's family, and specifically her brother Nels, had a really hard time accepting that, which I also totally understand, as we just discussed.
I'm on Team Steve and Team Nels.
Right.
Like, I get why Steve doesn't want to take it, and I get why Nels wants him to take it.
I get it. Me too. I really do. A search warrant was obtained in early August for Steve and Amy's home, and their cottage was thoroughly searched along with Steve's pickup. Cadaver dogs were brought in, but picked up on nothing. Luminol test, which pick up the tiniest fraction of blood, even if it's been painted over, all came back negative. Investigators found no incriminating evidence whatsoever, except for some old journals.
Okay.
According to Steve, years prior, years before he'd even met Amy, Steve had written some dark poetry concerning power, death, killing, and allegedly these were song lyrics from when he was in a punk band in high school. Now, I actually tried finding these writings and I couldn't find them.
Oh, man.
But for investigators, this was the smoking gun.
This is like the gold.
It was. Now, for me, as someone who would very generously call myself an artist.
Cynthia's dark and moody. Therefore, she's an artist.
I probably, again, without having read them, I don't know. I write stuff that could be taken out of context.
Sure.
You know, in fact, in researching this case, thought, there was a period of time where I literally only wrote when I was unhappy. Like, if I'm happy, I don't write. But if I were to write a song, I would write it when I was sad, when I was heartbroken, when I was angry.
Feeling a big emotion.
Yes. If things are good, I'm not making art.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So For me, without having actually read the writings, I get it. Plus, you're in high school in a punk band. Of course, the lyrics are going to be like angsty.
I mean, he's not in sync, you know? This isn't Backstreet Boys. He's no JT.
He is not. That is for sure. Well, Steve quickly became the subject of suspicion.
Sure.
Many people found him to be cocky, and hiring a high-profile lawyer like Spence surely didn't win him any likability
Or
points.
he's just convinced of his innocence.
True. Exactly. If you know you didn't kill somebody, being
Yeah.
told we know you killed somebody, like, you're not going to convince me I did that.
I am confidently cocky in saying, no, I did not kill my wife.
Right. And probably a little frustrated that I keep being accused of it. Like, I'm going to start to get an attitude, which is going to make me unlikable.
I'd probably get a little indignant.
And
Yeah.
you're reading my journals from high school and acting as if that's who I am now. And like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But it didn't win him any likability points.
Yeah, got it.
And his refusal to grant any further interviews with investigators is still a point of contention for some people. So at the same time, the rock climbing crowd and, the people in Steve's social circle were very quick to come to his defense, saying there was no way he could have hurt Amy. And when asked if the Bechtels had any marital problems, the only person who said that it was even a remote possibility was Amy's brother, Nels. Todd Skinner, who remember was a very close friend and their landlord and their boss, said, quote, "They were the sweetest couple I ever ran across," end quote. So Steve has said all along that the fact that the focus remained on him as the sole suspect really hampered what could have been a more effective investigation. And Detective Zerga, who picked up the cold case in 2010, didn't disagree. The pursuit of Steve by previous detectives likely blinded them to other crucial evidence pointing towards an entirely new possibility.
Yeah, I feel for Steve in this one and for Amy's family, who are really getting robbed of more answers.
There are some cases where I'm like, I don't know, could they have been involved? I absolutely 100% do not believe that Steve has any idea what happened to his wife. Like, I think he was just a good guy. They were madly in love. And I really think he did everything he could possibly do to try to find her. One of these new possibilities that has popped up in more recent years was the question as to whether Amy could have been the victim of one of the worst serial killers in Wyoming history.
Oh.
In 1997, Dale Wayne Eaton was not yet fully on law enforcement's radar. His first brush with authorities wouldn't happen until months after Amy's disappearance, when he was convicted of attempting to kidnap a family that had broken down on an isolated highway in the Red Desert. Dale Eaton's brother, Richard, reached out to Fremont County detectives after Amy went missing and suggested that Dale may have been involved with her disappearance. He told authorities that he and Dale would often hunt and fish in the Burnt Gulch area where Amy's car was found, and he thought Dale was camping there in the summer of 1997.
Oh. Also, trying to kidnap a family.
Isn't that scary?
A family.
When I read that, that sent chills down my spine.
Yeah, I wanted to pause because, well, you don't hear that every day.
Right. Now, in retrospect, Detective Zerga said the information should have been followed up on.
Oh, you think?
Right, yeah. And one of the reasons why he thought so was this was kind of an isolated area. And he said very few people camp over there or even know of that area.
It's suspicious,
Right.
for sure.
Absolutely. But tragically, the tip was basically ignored. At the time, authorities believed Richard Eaton was more motivated by the $100,000 reward than actually finding justice for Amy.
Yes, unfortunately, that may have been true, but what other lead do they have to go on at this point? I mean, outside of chasing down Steve.
That's the thing. They already believed they had their man. They have Steve.
That's incredibly disappointing.
I think our detectives who were working the case were so adamant that it was Steve that they were not looking in other directions, Detective Zerga told the Casper Star Tribune in 2013. This is coming from the new investigator.
Was Eaton ever able to be questioned?
Well, let's learn a little bit more about Eaton.
Okay.
After spending only 99 days in jail for the attempted kidnapping
Of a family.
Dale Eaton was eventually arrested again near Du Bois on July 30th, 1998, after violating parole. And while being held, Eaton killed his cellmate in a fit of rage.
Yay!
Facing manslaughter charges for that death, DNA samples taken from Eaton would link him with the 1988 cold case rape and murder of Lisa Marie Kimmel. So
Oh, snap.
almost a decade prior to Amy's
Wow.
disappearance.
Wow. So he was already active.
Yes.
And he was familiar with that area.
Yes.
And he's a sociopath.
Yes.
Okay.
An ensuing search of Dale Eaton's property turned up Kimmel's buried car, as well as
A
women's
buried car.
a buried car,
A buried car.
as well as women's clothing and purses, and numerous newspaper reports about other murdered and missing women.
Ew. Ew. Okay. I do not like serial killer stories. They really bother me. This guy is a real something.
He's bad. He's bad.
Bad news.
Steve asked the Natrona County Sheriff's Office if he might be able to see some of these items that were found in Dale's possession.
Yeah, like maybe Amy's wallet is in there.
Right. He was trying to find out if there was anything he may recognize as belonging to Amy.
Yeah.
He was denied access to any of these items.
You know, I mean, can I see that on law enforcement's perspective, trying to preserve those pieces of evidence? At the same time, I mean, was he given a list of some of those items?
That's what I'm not sure, because I would have to assume we know she had a green wallet that was missing.
And
Is
that
there
would
something that matches that description?
Exactly. Yeah. Huh. All right.
But at the same time, even if nothing was found in his possession, that doesn't mean he couldn't have been responsible.
I totally agree with that. But it certainly would have been.
It would have been pretty circumstantial proof.
I
that
mean,
he was involved.
In his case, I think it would have been proof that Amy was one of his victims.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, some authorities believe that Dale Eaton may be the Great Basin serial killer, who is believed to be responsible for the murders of at least 9 women in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada between 1983 and 1997.
Wow.
Amy's disappearance has many similarities to the disappearance of another woman named Kathleen Peringer, a 41-year-old who went missing from nearby Riverton in 1989. On March 3rd, 2004, Dale Eaton was found guilty of raping and killing Lisa Marie Kimmel, and he was sentenced to death. But endless appeals eventually bought Eaton a resentencing, and his sentence was changed to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine being these guys' attorney?
Oh, I don't know how you sleep at night. I mean, I get it. Everybody deserves like a fair trial, but
yeah, but to have to
I couldn't
represent
do
that
it.
guy,
No, I couldn't do it.
No, I mean that's yeah.
What makes matters worse, I mean, he's in prison for life, right? Nothing's going to change that. He has still refused to ever cooperate with authorities regarding other cases of missing women. So Detective Zerga and an FBI agent tried to visit Eaton in Colorado in 2010. He refused to see them.
I mean, this is just evil. It is evil.
Which is, I mean, a serial killer is an evil person. So I get it. Like, it's not surprising, but still.
This is next level evil.
It is. It is. Detective Zerga followed up with Dale's brother Richard in 2012, and Richard reiterated his conviction that Dale Wayne Eaton was camping in the area that Amy vanished from around that same time. So Zerga, desperate to try to find some answers for the Bechtel family, went back to interview Dale in 2013.
Oh, snap.
Well, instead of providing any answers, Eaton cursed him and told him, quote, where he could go. End quote.
Well, I can tell you where you can go, Dale Wayne Eaton. Where you're going to go.
I don't make the final call, but I'm pretty sure I know where you're going. And
yeah,
it ain't good.
Yeah.
If Dale Eaton was responsible for the disappearance of Amy, he could have helped to provide peace for a mourning family. But instead, he chose to give nothing.
I mean, it truly is pray for his soul.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is tough.
Detective Zerga seems more and more convinced that it was Eaton who had something to do with Amy's disappearance. Rummaging through old cold cases, working with FBI agents involved in the Kimmel killing and speaking with Eaton's family members have all led Detective Zerga down this same path, pointing to Eaton. Quote, "There's a good reason to believe Dale was involved with this," end quote, he told reporters in 2013. Now, as of the time of this recording, it's been 9,797 days since Amy did not come home. Almost 27 years. At this point, Amy is a rare statistic. Fewer than 1% of people reported missing are never found. On average, 500,000 to 700,000 people are reported missing every year in the US, and about 77% of those are found within 24 hours and 87% within 2 days. Only 3% of adults will be missing for longer than a week.
Wow, I did not realize that.
It's actually comforting, isn't it? That's still 3% too many. That's still too many people, but it is comforting to know that this actually is statistically rare.
Okay. I
For
guess so.
Amy's-
So is being offed by a serial killer. I mean, at least we would hope.
That is true. That is true. For Amy's friends and family, the worst part is the not knowing. Jake Nichols from CowboyStateDaily.com, who I got a lot of my information from, put it beautifully when he said, quote, "Amy Wroe Bechtel, like the rest of the missing, is not altogether alive nor convincingly dead. She's a ghost," end quote. I thought, that's it. They can't really mourn her completely because what if she's still alive? And at the same time, she's not here. What an awful position to even attempt to think about being in for even a minute. Like, that's just too much for my brain.
No, I told you. I mean, losing a child is horrible, but not knowing where that child is, I think, would be even worse.
Awful.
And that's some of the reason why we cover these, as hard as they are, for the chance that they are out there.
Right?
They can hear us, someone that knows them can hear us, and that their family, can get answers. I mean, hopefully they're alive, but even if they're not, a clue as to where their remains can be found or where their body rests, that gives closure too, in a big way.
Absolutely.
And I mean, closure is such a silly word in a lot of ways, but it does. It gives you, it at least gives your mind some peace.
Some answers.
Sure.
You're not spending the rest of your days wondering, are they hurt?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah. And pain. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
In 2016, Steve Bechtel would grant a rare interview with Runner's World, the magazine, when he recalled the night Amy never came home. "It was funny," he said. "I got home from climbing. It's just a normal day. Get unpacked, feed the dog or whatever. Then I start wondering, where is she? Make some calls, drive around a little bit. It gets to be like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. That incredible anxiety builds up. You're just worried. I hope she didn't break her ankle. I hope she didn't run out of gas. Those normal things where you're like, this sucks. But you're not going, I hope my wife wasn't grabbed by some psychopathic serial killer."
Right. He's totally right.
The Runner's World issue featuring Amy's story remains the magazine's all-time highest-selling issue.
I bet.
Amy was declared legally dead in 2004, and Steve has since remarried and remains in Lander with his wife Ellen and their 2 children. And this brings us to our Branch of Hope topic. So this is a Branch of Hope case for the month of June. The true stories we tell on this podcast do provide entertainment and excitement, but we always want to show compassion and respect to the victims and their loved ones. And the Branch of Hope Foundation allows us to give back to the community, spread awareness about unsolved cases, and hopefully bring a little comfort and hope to those who need it. So each month we will highlight a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. So that's today. So in honor of Amy, we are highlighting the Amy Wroe Bechtel Scholarship Endowment at Northwest College, Wyoming. So here's what Northwest College, Wyoming has to say about this scholarship. Community. A word that is defined by the people and culture in Powell and at Northwest College. This was true for Joanne Wroe, Amy Wroe Bechtel's mother, in the days and years after her daughter's mysterious disappearance. The community came together and supported the Wroe family as they continued to search for 23-year-old Amy. Amy was a runner who competed for the University of Wyoming track team. She was last seen running in the mountains outside Lander in 1997. Her family established a recovery fund to help pay for search expenses and folded that money into an endowment in her name as the case grew cold. Her mom explained, "We know that this decision would please her. Our children have achieved great success in their lives as a result of their higher education accomplishments, which they truly value. We hope that this scholarship will help others to achieve their goals."
Wow. What a really magnanimous gift. Very kind.
I really loved the fact that when the money they had raised for their search efforts stopped helping their cause to find Amy, they were able to forward
Yeah.
it on and give back and help other people. I really thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible. What an amazing organization that honors her and her family.
Yes, I agree. And to know that her mom helped to create this and helped, direct where this money would go and how it would help, I thought was really special.
Yeah, absolutely. If this particular cause pulls at your heartstrings, you can donate directly to this organization. You can find their contact information on our website or on our social media platforms. You can also join our Patreon, where a portion of your subscription will go directly to, tell me the name of it again, because it was kind of a long name.
The Amy Wroe Bechtel Scholarship Endowment at Northwest College, Wyoming.
I am so glad that I asked you to repeat that. But basically, Amy Scholarship. That's what I'll refer to it as. But if you want to donate directly there, again, find our information, join our Patreon. Also, share this episode with somebody that you think might like it or somebody who enjoys mystery podcasts, because the way we get out there is word of mouth. We can do marketing and advertising, but truly word of mouth is the way new podcasts get noticed. And we want you to be a part of that.
The main reason we want to be heard is because we are covering these unsolved cases. We do that on purpose because we want to shine light. We want to garner attention. Hopefully somebody knows something and is able to provide some answers for a family who needs it.
Exactly. We are simply a podcast leading through words and actions. And if you love this episode, again, share it with someone. You can also send us an email at thedarkoakpodcast@gmail.com. We are open to your questions, comments, and anything else you want to share. And for other ways to connect, hop over again to our website at thedarkoak.com. And be sure to follow us to our next episode where we cover Ryan Singleton. It is so strange. Truth is stranger than fiction.
I'm not familiar with that case, so I'm very curious as to what you're going to share.
Come back.
I will. I'll be here.
See ya, Shiver Seekers.
Bye.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.